All right. Welcome to week 4, the final week. I hope you guys got a chance to look over that practical application session 2 days ago on Wednesday. I thought that went phenomenally. I think that went about as good as it possibly could have gone. I was really happy with the results that we got, and I think we did a really good job trying to coach people through troubleshooting and figuring out like, hey, what's wrong with this person and what can we do to make this person feel the right things. I thought it went great. And so that's going to be an extremely helpful resource for you. And once you kind of feel what the right things are on some of these exercises, what's great is that it carries over to all the exercises. So you'll kind of know what I mean when you experience it. It's like if you understand how to go gently with like a short seated breathing or a 90-90 hip lift or a sideline grounding, then you know how to kind of carry that over to the progressions like the glute max, the abduct and shift, and then you know how to go from there. So that's going to be really helpful for you. Now, today's purpose is to talk about exercise, literal exercise. Last week was more corrective exercise. And we're going to talk about lifestyle things too. I had someone in the chat say, turn down your own speakers. Okay, let me do that. Did that help my sound? Is my sound okay still? Are you guys hearing me loud and clear? I need someone to unmute themselves and confirm that it's good.
Yeah, absolutely fine on my end.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
And
good
I'm
on
all
my-
the way in
All right.
England.
Then the
so
person
you're good.
saying that they have an issue might be a them problem. Okay. All right. So yeah, we're going to get into actual exercise selection here. I own a gym, I'm very passionate about exercise. And I think it's not only that, but it's so important to be able to strengthen these new patterns, these new postures, these new ranges of motion that we have access to now. Because, it's only going to do us so much. If we can do some corrective exercises, restore some range of motion, great. But what happens when your body's actually under stress? What happens when you go for a run? What happens when you go climbing with your friends? What happens when you're having a really bad day at work or a really bad month at work and your body is wanting to revert back to its old patterns and its default sort of network settings for your posture and your movement? That's why it's really important to solidify this stuff. And nothing does a better job than that, than actual weight room strength training. Now, in the actual biomechanics course, we go into this for multiple weeks. We get really heavy into like the specificity of how we bias certain things. We're going to touch that very, very lightly today, but I'm going to go over the big rocks and the things that are going to make the biggest difference, because while weight training is extremely helpful, it's also the thing that can hold you back the most. So if you go and do these drills and you get some great changes, and then you go and you strength train and you do it like a power lifter, you will set yourself back to square one immediately. Now, some people in this course, they don't care. They're like, hey, I just want some drills that will help me feel better while I lift. And after that, whatever. I don't really care. I just want to get through my training session. I want to get through my run, or I want to get through my yoga class without any issues. And if that's you, more power to you. I don't really care. But if you want to feel good long term, then it's important that you actually have some foundational principles and some things that are fundamentals to weight training that will really help you keep these adaptations, if not make them even better. And that's really the key here. So no matter what, guys, one thing I want to make really clear is that no matter what you do with your body, no matter whether you're putting on a new pair of shoes, whether you're putting on a pair of glasses, even whether you're doing a specific corrective exercise outside of this course, if it's good for you, then 99% of the time, it should objectively change your assessments from this course. This course's assessments are very simple in some ways. In some ways, they're not, but ultimately, they're just representations of how much tension your body is holding, how much relative motion your body has access to before it starts compensating and orienting. So if something is giving your body a reason to have less tension, then you should see that reflected in your measurements. If it's making it worse and it's locking you up, then your measurements will get worse. So if you're ever on the fence in the future about, is this stretch good for me? Is this corrective exercise good for me? Is this thing I'm doing for my yoga class good for me? Is this squat good for me? Then just test yourself before and after. And if you feel generally the same, then it's probably fine. If you feel better, then it's great. But if you feel way worse, then you got to consider the potential consequences. Now, just because something makes you worse doesn't mean it's something you shouldn't do, but it is something that might potentially set you back unless you offset it with potentially other drills or other intervention strategies. Now, some things will set you off and set you back, but that's just the reality of life. If you go and do a really heavy set of squats, you're going to get locked up. But the question is, can you get out of that? And that's what some of these drills are going to help you do. That's what some of these things we're going to talk about today are going to help you do. So that's going to be an extremely helpful piece of information for you moving forward. Let's get into the actual presentation. And then one really cool thing, I don't know if you guys knew this was coming, but at the end of this, I'm going to be showing you, I'm not going to be walking you through it, but I have written out literal exercise programs for sort of like every type of person. Well, not every type of person, but most of the common types of people. Like, what would a good strength training program generally look like with exercise selection, reasoning, sets and reps for someone that has like anterior pelvic tilt and rib flare? Or what about sway back posture, rounded shoulders? What if they're left lateralized? What if they're right lateralized? So you're going to get literal programs later today, and that's going to be really helpful for you to see how I would put that together in a real life setting. I think that's pretty sweet. So you can look forward to having access to that indefinitely. Oh, and one more thing I do want to say before I start. You're going to have access to these course materials for as long as I have access to my web host software on the internet. So it's not going anywhere. Don't freak out. If for whatever reason, an absolute worst case scenario occurs, and for some reason, like I switch my web host or I have to move off of, I use Kajabi. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but that's where I host all of my courses. If I have to move off of that, I will just put everything on a Google Drive for you. So that way you have it and it's going to be easy for you to access. But this stuff isn't going anywhere. So it's going to be helpful for you to come back to it. I guess I kind of already said all of this. We're going to talk about the basics of exercise selection. We're going to talk about specific exercises, and I'm going to show you a sequence of progression for each movement pattern that's going to be really helpful for you to go, okay, I think I could start with that one and then progress to that one and then so on and so forth. It's kind of like a reductionist view of what we do in the actual biomechanics course. And then we're going to talk about lifestyle stuff. And we're going to talk about those harder cases. What if you're one of those people that can't shut off their neck? What should you do? What if you're one of those people where your assessments don't actually stick long term? What should you do? That's what we're going to hit last. So why should you strength train? Even if you don't, I'm not going to get into the health benefits of all that. We should have a general good understanding by now. Most people should know that it's good for longevity. It's good for just generally living your life in a healthier way. It's better for body composition, blah, blah, blah. You guys probably already know that. But the corrective exercise movements, they unlock space and movement patterns. And over time, that stuff can stick, but they do not strengthen your muscles. A sideline glute max with band around your knees does not strengthen your glute max. It is not going to make your butt grow. Contrary to what some people on the internet may have you believe with banded glute work, it is absolutely not going to make your butt grow. And it's not going to necessarily strengthen your glutes' ability to potentially push you over to the other side in a given externally weighted environment. So if you have some demand on your body, let's say you're moving or you're picking something up and you have to turn from right to left, yes, you might have the ability to connect your glute to your foot arch and be able to effectively push out of that side in some ways. But if it's something that requires you to push against an external load, that is not going to be necessarily trained with these more breathing corrective exercise interventions. So if you want it to carry over to your life, we got to be able to actually strengthen these things. And if your body is stressed, then this stuff tends to carry over better too. And that does also apply to psychological stress, not just physical stress. Also, proper exercise can unlock further range of motion. If you're doing something that is an adequate amount of load to challenge you, but also you're moving through mostly relative motion, you might be surprised what happens to your assessment results. You might be surprised what happens to your straight leg raise. You might be surprised what happens to your trunk rotation. Some really cool things can happen. I'm going to show you exercises that can do that. Now, there is ultimately a gradient. So you can imagine something that's extremely heavy, like the heaviest possible weight that you can lift for one rep, and then something that's like a warm-up load. Things that are more on this end of the spectrum help restore motion, relative motions, improve the assessments, these are going to improve fitness and strength and power, but they're probably going to take away from some of your assessments because you have to compress and squeeze and create so much tension to do those things. So the goal is to have both of these things and be able to create different workouts and different exercise selection and different intensities throughout the week that give you access to all of those things. So here's some things if I'm working with someone that's in pain or they want to improve their posture or they want to improve their movement. These are all things that I'm thinking about at all times within my exercise selection. The first thing is alternating movement. When I say alternating, I mean that one arm goes forward while the other stays back, and then the other arm goes forward while the other one comes back. Think about how like a press could be done that way. This is way better for keeping your rib cage unlocked. This is way better for keeping your hips more mobile and getting more movement through your spine in a healthy way. Reaching is another important thing. I rarely cue, excuse me, shoulders back and down on a given exercise. I don't like doing that because of reasons I will explain in a second. I don't like to do anything that is going to promote squeezing and tension that isn't necessary. And I do like to promote things where you're getting healthy movement through the shoulder. Healthy movement through the shoulder involves the shoulder blade and the arm bone, the humerus moving. They have a relationship, whereas one moves, the other does a certain thing. And so if you're only moving through your arm and you're keeping your shoulder blade as the thing that's not moving for stability or whatever that means, then you're actually compromising the health of your shoulder. You're actually making yourself significantly worse. And there's a time and place for that. If you're a power lifter or something like that, lifting really heavy load, but for the majority of the population, we should be actually letting our shoulder blades move, especially as we weight train. Stacked rib cage over the pelvis. This is probably the number one. This is probably the most important thing. And I would, if I'm being completely honest and transparent with you, which I try to be throughout this course, I try not to make you guys focus on stuff that isn't that important. Well, this is, and this is probably 70 to 80% of it. If you can learn how to do this under load and actually stack properly, this is going to allow you to not only keep your adaptations, but improve your assessment measurements. And also this is going to keep you healthy longer. If you don't keep your stack, which we'll talk about thoroughly, and I have a very nice video for that, then you're probably going to have some issues. You're probably going to revert back to your sway back posture, your anterior orientation. But ultimately, it just depends on what your compensation strategy is. The way that you work to achieve a stack is a little bit different depending on where you're coming from. Unilateral movement, that means doing things on one side of the body. The body was ultimately designed to have alternating reciprocal motion, meaning that whatever's happening on one side, the opposite is usually happening on the other. As we're walking through the world, our arms are swinging, blah, blah, blah. So unilateral movement best represents that in a weighted setting. And hip shifts are another thing that I'm thinking about. How am I turning my pelvis? If I'm lateralized to one side, am I turning into that side? Am I turning away from that side with load? We'll talk about that a little bit too. But ultimately, the big rocks are stacked rib cage, alternating, and unilateral movement. Those are the things that are going to help you stay healthier longer and help you feel better. Step one, learn to stack. What is a stack? It means that your diaphragms, your pelvic floor is actually a diaphragm, and it can be thought of one in many different ways. So we call this stacking your diaphragms on top of each other. Now, over here on the left, you see anterior pelvic tilt. And you can also lose your stack with a posterior pelvic tilt and sway back. You would just imagine those things are tilted in the opposite direction. But if you can properly achieve a stack, that means you have a neutral spine. There's a lot of crap on the internet that has the idea that a neutral spine is like this flagpole or this straight line, this steel bar. That's not true at all. So a neutral spine should involve some degree of rounding of the upper back, a little bit of an arch in the neck, and a little bit of an arch in the low back. That's true neutrality. That's going to allow your spine and your low back and your upper back, your neck to feel way better than if you're trying to just like get tall, and getting tall flares your rib cage. It locks you up. It prevents you from actually moving, and it's going to create a lot of rigidity. That's why power lifters who use that posture where they're just like squeeze their shoulders back, get the chest up, butt back, they're moving into this image on the left. And those people really can't move. and they're making a conscious choice to do that. But if you train like that all the time, you're going to end up like that. Now, here's a nice sort of very long video about how you can genuinely create a stack. We're going to watch the very beginning of it, so that way you guys can see exactly how I would cue it. And before I ever teach anyone in my gym or within any of my courses how to do a squat or a deadlift or whatever, I need them to know what this feels like first. It's the equivalent of learning how to breathe before you do like a 90-90 hip lift or a, grounding or whatever. So let's see if you guys can hear this. The head. Hang on, let me turn up my volume a little bit. This is all right, I'm going to need someone to confirm that they can hear this. Okay. This is a tutorial on how we teach snacking mechanics. This is one of the first things that I will teach any client, regardless of what their goal is, because this is going to put them in a really good position to align the head, the rib cage, the pelvis, and the rest of the body. Usually when these structures are in place, everything else clicks into the right place as a result of these bigger proximal structures being aligned. So what I usually say is, Trevor, I just want you to stand with your feet relatively hip width apart, and I want you to feel the foot contacts of your heel, particularly your inner heel, your first metatarsal head, and not losing the outside foot. So also feel a little bit of your fifth metatarsal head right there. And that's just going to give us a stable base of support. Now, you're going to bend your knees very, very slightly, just maybe 5–10% max. And now I want you to put your hands on your hips. And imagine your pelvis is a bowl of water. You don't want it to spill out the front too much. You don't want it to spill out the back. You want it to be nice and neutral. So depending on whether someone has in their resting posture a anterior or posterior tilt of the pelvis, you may need to adjust. Most people will have more of an anterior tilt, so you might want to cue them to bring their pelvis a little bit under them. On that same note of getting that, if they have a posterior tilt and they're really sort of like down and depressed within their sternum, or they have like that sway back where it looks like they have an anterior tilt, but it's like, yeah, you're like really rounded here. I just cue that. I'm not cueing a tuck of the pelvis usually. I'm usually just cueing them to get tall, keep the pelvis level with the ground, but then get an exhale while keeping the sternum up. If you feel this on yourself, and I'm going to talk about this in a second in more detail, you should be able to sit tall, keep your sternum facing straight ahead, and fully exhale and feel your rib cage come down without your sternum coming with you. That's how you achieve a proper stack, assuming you have the weight distribution in your foot in order, and you also have your pelvis neutral with the ground. Posterior tilt, as we'll talk about in a second, you want the posterior tilt coming from the position of the rib cage being in the right position. So I don't want any tension in the glutes or really even like the six-pack abs as they tuck. I want it to happen because of a natural exhale. So exhaling will naturally bring the rib cage down, and you'll see how that works in a second. The next thing we're going to do is get the rib cage in a good position. So we know that the normal human spine curve has that S-shaped curve. So we have a little bit of lumbar lordosis and extension, a little bit of thoracic kyphosis and flexion, and our head has a little bit of lordosis as well. So we're going to go after a little bit of the kyphosis here. So I'm going to have Trevor keeping his eyes at straight ahead, horizon level. He's going to reach his arms out in front of him, very slightly protracting the shoulder. He's getting a little bit of space between his scapula and his spine. He doesn't want to reach so much that his sternum depresses. He just wants to stay tall and get that nice reach. Now, if I notice that Trevor now becomes a little bit too extended through his low back as he does this, I'm going to cue him to exhale. Bring his rib cage down underneath him. You should be able to reach and feel your shoulder blades move a little bit away from your spine, just 20–15%. Now, you can tell that Trevor looks pretty good in this position right here. His head is stacked over his ribs, which are stacked over his hips and his feet. This is what I will say is the stack. I'll tell my clients, I want you to sear this into your brain, and I want you to really memorize what this feels like, because these same principles apply to so many different exercises like we're about to show you. Now let me show you how we can apply this to something simple like a goblet squat, because we're not always going to be able to just reach like this. But if I have Trevor hold that in a normal kettlebell goblet position like this, I can still have him get all of the same things we just talked about. So foot pressures are there, very slight unlocking of the knees, eyes at horizon level. Now here is how we get the rib cage and pelvis stack. Take the weight, still hold it close, but reach the elbows a little bit further away from you, just a tiny bit. And you'll see that his sternum stays up and his ribs come back a little bit. And that exhale sets the rib cage in a good position. Now, Trevor can inhale and descend by unlocking at the knees and going down. And he can exhale, coming back up, maintaining that slight reach of the elbow. So we and get that full exhale. Now, the tricky part with this, though, is maintaining this together as he goes into the hinge. So he's going to make sure he gets that forward folding and pushing his hips back. You can tell that he still has maintained that relationship really nicely. So this is mostly flat, a little bit of rounding here, but eyes are at 6 feet in front of him. And then he can come up, press through those foot contacts, and make sure he ends in that hip extended position. Now, there's obviously 1,000 different row variations, but we're going to choose this chest supported row because it helps illustrate pretty clearly visually what we want in the stack here. So Trevor would allow his head to be hanging off of the bench a little bit, but supported by the pads. So that way he can maintain a little bit of that natural lordosis of the neck. And his low back will naturally be in that position where it has a little bit of the lordosis simply because of that prone position. And all he's going to do is very gently reach the weights away from him. Not so much to where his sternum depresses and his back rounds like that, just a tiny bit of a reach, just maybe like 10, 15%. Now, all he's going to do is maintain that as he pulls his elbow in. Usually when we row, we want to lead with the elbow, not the scap, because that's going to have us lose that congruency of the scapula on that rib cage. So he's going to lead with the elbow and the scapula will take care of itself in most cases. If we're doing a press and we want to maintain that stack to the maximal extent that is possible, like let's say we're teaching someone how to press effectively, a hook line position could be really helpful, or just putting the feet on those pegs down below could also be a good way to still make sure that low back can be flat on the bench. If you don't have those pegs, you can put a couple of 45-pound plates on the floor and stack them up so that way you can still get that flat back against the bench there. Now, when it comes to a press, it's very common to hear squeeze your shoulders back and puff your chest out. That is not going to get you the stack. That's going to reduce that curvature in the thoracic spine. That's going to create a lot of compression there. That's actually problematic for the shoulder. So what we want is to feel the space in between our scapula and the spine right in here on the bench, but not trying to force ourselves into that position. We just want to gently feel that pressure up against the bench without our shoulders rounding forward. Now, as Trevor goes to the press, he's going to lower one weight, and naturally that will have the scapula come back closer to the spine. That's natural, allow that to happen. And then pressing up, allowing his scapula to very slightly move away from the spine, but not to the point where his shoulder rounds forward. You can make sure you're doing that well if your sternum stays up. If your sternum stays up at the ceiling, then you're doing it in all likelihood really well. But if your sternum depresses, then that's not good.
And that's pretty much all it is. If you can apply these things to those basic movement patterns, you're going to see a lot of really good things happen. And you're not going to feel like crap after you're done weight training, like a lot of people do. So the only thing I would add to this is, again, like for that more sway backy person, I'm going to make sure that they're staying a little bit more tall. But with someone that's more anteriorly tilted, it is important to sometimes cue a little bit of a posterior tilt. Now, that posterior tilt, once again, should come from that exhale rather than them squeezing their glutes and tucking under. I'd say the hardest thing to apply this to is probably a deadlift. This takes real skill. It takes some practice. I'll give you some ideas for how to make it easier.
So he's got to make sure he...
All right. So now picking the right exercises. So we have 5 main overall movement patterns. There's definitely more than this, but just for the purposes of simplicity and what most people care about, most people's programs are going to have a squat, a deadlift, hinge, an upper push, an upper pull. That would be like a press, a row, and then core exercises. So I'm going to show you ones that are going to help you solidify the ability to stack, progressively load more, and make some gains. So bilateral means stuff on both sides of the body being done at the same time. So like your traditional like squat on both legs or deadlift, you want to think about it like that.
If you want to make a squat easier, I'm sure you guys have seen before people elevate their heels. Well, why is that? Well, elevating your heels biases your hips towards external rotation. So if a squat is externally rotation dominant, which it is relative to a hinge, then elevating your heels is going to allow you to access more external rotation. It's also going to allow you to find your heels better, because the biggest problem people have with squats is that they overall just shove their hips back and turn it into a hinge because they don't have space for their pelvis and hips to go straight down. So elevating the heels gives you space to do that. It gives your knees the opportunity to move over your toes. Now, I know knees over toes is a big sensation on the internet right now, and for somewhat good reason. That's a different discussion for a different day, but it is important as it relates to the squats. So you should be able to keep your full foot contacts, your heel, base of your big toe, base of your little toe, let your knees go over your toes and drop straight down. The amount of heel elevation will vary. We like to use wedges from Prime USA. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. I'm not sponsored or anything, but I do just like their products. So we use somewhere between a 5 to 15 degree wedge, and that usually works quite well. I'm a big fan of wedges that allow your whole foot to be flat. Not necessarily, like most wedges are short, so the foot can't actually fully get on it. And so the big toe is shoved up. It's not the end of the world, but I'm just way more of a fan where the whole foot can be flat because it allows for healthier foot mechanics through the lowering and re-raising of the foot arch. Here are some squat variations that can help you, starting from the easiest and the least challenging, and it requires the least amount of relative motion all the way up to the one that would require the most amount of loading and the most amount of relative motion under a heavier load. So this is probably the easiest way to learn how to squat, using a TRX and just using some heel elevation, learning what it feels like just to allow the knees to go over the toes and allowing you to have a more vertical pelvis. I'm a big fan of that. There's a lot of different instructions within these videos, so we're not going to watch the whole thing. It's really just there so you guys can kind of see the idea of it. Then if you want more, you're going to have these things linked to you within the slides. The cable Zercher squat is another fantastic way that you can learn how to squat because that weight is pulling you forward. So reflexively, you have to lean back against that load and just let your knees go straight forward. Now, I will say, for people that are anteriorly oriented, more your anterior pelvic tilt rib flare people, this works really well. But for a sway back person, they have a tendency to tuck too much underneath them. So you have to cue them to be a little bit taller. But this can be a really, really good way. I would say 95% of people should be able to do this and get into a nice deep squat without any issues whatsoever. From there, you can start to actually add load. So we can do a goblet squat. And this is a really high goblet squat. I would probably make sure that they're going to at least 60 degrees, if not deeper than that. But this is like the easiest possible way. Band around the knees just allows your knees to stay in line with the toes. I would not shove the knees out against the resistance of the band. That's just there as a teaching tool. And that's not something I would keep long term. Eventually, I would probably just get rid of that band, get them down to a 90-degree box, and then get them 90-degree box, meaning that their hips are bent at a 90-degree angle once they get down to that box. So the thigh would be more parallel with the floor. And one really underrated squat variation is this Zercher dumbbell position. This is going to cook your abs. It's not going to be great for getting a lot of stimulation and overload of your legs, but it's really, really effective for training you how to keep your stack because you can get a little reach of those elbows, get those shoulder blades move away from the spine, and it is so incredibly easy to drop down into a squat in this position. And, Trevor looks awesome right there. Totally vertical pelvis going straight up, straight down like an elevator. It's awesome. Eventually, you can move to a kettlebell front rack squat. This one is probably the easiest in terms of the ability to load it more, but also still keep your stack. The important thing with this one, guys, though, is when Trevor goes down, he's keeping the weights close, but he's pushing his elbows away. So you don't want to push the weights away. You want to just push the elbows away to get that protraction and get that upper back in the right position. And then you can move on to your front squat, I really like the safety squat bar. I really like a high bar back squat if it's done well. But ultimately, loading the front of your body is going to allow you to stay more upright. So you notice how literally all of these had weights on the front of the body. That's because it's pulling you forward. So reflexively, you have to stand up more, but you got to keep your stack as you do it. Hinges are going to be overall more internal rotation dominant relative to squats. To make them easier, to allow you to hinge more effectively and open up your hips into internal rotation, using toe elevation is actually really effective, especially as a teaching tool early on. You don't have to even use a wedge. You could use a little like 2.5, 1.25 kilo weight plate, little 5-pound plate, 2.5 kilos, slide it underneath the forefoot, and that'll allow you to more easily push your center of gravity back. It'll allow you to really get deeper into your hips. Now, when it comes to a deadlift, it really is important that we have a couple of things in place. It is probably the harder one to teach and learn for sure, but if we're going to do it, we need to make sure that when we're at the bottom position, we do have, look at my back, it's kind of flat here, then I have a little bit of curvature, and then I have a little bit of an arch in my neck. I'm looking a couple feet in front of my body, and I feel some tension in the back of my glutes. You guys remember that wall walk down hinge activity? Fantastic way to start to learn how to hinge properly. So if you can do the wall walk down hinge, and you could do it and feel that stretch in your glutes and maybe a little bit of your hamstrings, that's a similar feel you should feel at the bottom of a deadlift. So we don't have, I mean, really, it's like one of those things you have to practice. But if you wanted to make it a little easier, you could do something like this, where you're elevated. You can keep a ball in between your knees. That drives a little bit more internal rotation. But really, the easiest way to do it is just to grab a trap bar and just use toe elevation. So we have heel elevation and toe elevation here. I would only use heel elevation in a deadlift if someone arches their back like crazy. They have like huge anterior pelvic tilt, really big rib flare. Biasing them towards actually a little bit more external rotation can make it easier. That's a complicated thing. I don't want you guys to think about that too much, but the toe elevation is going to be the most helpful thing here. Let's see if I can find it. That's heel elevation. Where's my toe elevation? Oh, I actually have it. I just have black wedges, so you guys can't really see it very well. There we go. So with this, it's going to make it easier for you to open up the backside of your pelvis into internal rotation. Now, if you wanted to make this even easier, elevate those plates on maybe even some blocks or some additional 45-pound plates. So imagine you have one of those plates that's on the bar right there, and you have the actual weight that's on the bar stacked on top of another one of those plates that's on the ground. Does that make sense? That will elevate the trap bar higher to reduce your range of motion and make it easier. That's what I recommend for a lot of people starting off. And then you could do your traditional conventional deadlift. I mean, that's like your deadlift you would see in powerlifting. A sumo deadlift, I'm not a fan of at all for people that have goals that this course is trying to accomplish, because a sumo deadlift will lock you up. It'll create a lot of extension. It's not, I want to demonize it, but if your goals are to feel and move better, don't sumo deadlift. It's probably not going to be the best thing that you could do. If anything, like a trap bar is probably the best way to go. Conventional deadlift, where your feet are more parallel, is probably a better option than sumo if you really want to use a barbell. Now let's get into more of the single leg stuff, because that's where a lot of this unilateral, alternating, reciprocating motion can be trained. The only more complicated thing I'm going to talk about, because some people are in this course, many of you, to fix your asymmetries and your lateralization. Well, here's the concept that's probably going to give you the most bang for your buck with that early on. If you want to improve your ability to turn into a given side, let's say you're lateralized to the right and you need to better shift into your left side. You want to use an opposite side load, meaning you're holding a weight in your right hand when your left foot is forward. The reason for that is because the body is naturally trying to balance itself out. So if I have a weight in my right hand and I'm just standing with my feet together, I have to turn slightly left and I have to load my left leg more, so that way I don't fall off to the right side. Now, if I have my left leg forward and a weight in my right hand, I'm being pulled off to the right side. So reflexively, I have to turn into my left hip, so that way I can keep my balance and my center of gravity stacked. You see how that would work? Now, if I wanted to push out of a given side more, then I would probably want to hold the weight in the same side of the leg that is forward. Because in order for me not to be pulled off to look at the far image on the right, if I have a weight in my left hand and my left foot is forward, I will need to turn away from the left side in order to not fall off to the left side. So this is really good for people that have a lateralization, let's say to the right side, hold the weight in the right hand when the right leg is forward. If I'm lateralized to the left, hold the weight in the left hand when the left leg is forward. A really easy way to think about it is if you're right lateralized, you're going to hold the weight in the right hand on both sides. If you're left lateralized, you're going to hold the weight in the left hand on both sides. Does that make sense? Because when your left leg is forward and you're right lateralized, you're holding the weight in the right hand, that'll turn you left. When your right leg is forward, it's going to turn you right, away from that right side. So here are some easy exercises for split squat variations that I think are really appropriate for a lot of people in this course to start off. I'm a big fan of rack support. The reason why is because it adds more stability and it can allow you to focus on moving through relative motions in good form rather than having to worry about balancing yourself or, falling off to one side or the other. Rack support, holding on to something is great. Just don't use it as a crutch to lean on. Just use it as a balance assistance, if you will. If you want to train balance, go train balance. But for this, we're training output and we're trying to move through more relative motions with good form. And we're trying to stimulate some muscle tissue to grow or get stronger. So add stability. That's always a better way. Now, in the bottom of a split squat, what we should see is a couple of things. The back knee is directly underneath the hip. There are going to be many of you in this course who lack the ability to get your hip into a fully extended position. The corrective exercises will help with that. But if you add a little bit of elevation underneath that back knee, you reduce the range of motion and you don't need to get as deep into hip extension on that back leg. So this will make it a lot easier for you. This is a great way to learn how to split squat. I'm a big fan of this starting off with a lot of people. Now from there, you can move into just a full split squat. You could even do a front foot elevated split squat. You don't even have to elevate your front foot like you are right now. That's just going to add more range of motion. But overall, you can see that it is just a simple, easy progression. Now, if you wanted to get more asymmetrical with it, what you could do is, let's say you want to work on better shifting into a given side. Doing a front foot elevated split squat and actively shifting into that leg as you're turning into, as you go down, you're turning into that side. Using an opposite side load will make it easier for you to do that. This is going to help you improve internal rotation on that left leg in this example right here. This would be in this exact exercise, what you're seeing live. This is a great exercise for a right lateralized person. Because not only are you going to improve internal rotation, but you're going to improve the ability for your pelvis to turn to the left side. It's really good. So here's like a bang for your buck way to think about it. You remember the adductor pullback exercise? Doing that in your prep, then doing this later on or following that could be a really good way to kind of like strengthen those muscles in that pattern. If you wanted to train the side you're lateralized to, then doing something like a rear foot elevated split squat with a weight in the same side of the leg that's forward. Again, this is a great exercise for a right lateralized person. This would all just flip if you were left. It's not that complicated. But for a rear foot elevated split squat, the reason why we're doing this is because the shin angle, the knee is going more over the toe here. And this is more representing pushing out of that side. Whereas the other one, you didn't really have that as much. The shin angle isn't as significant. So with this, you're really training the ability to push out of that right side. So doing something like a right glute max, the glute max activation, laying on your left side with your right glute, and then following it up with this could be a great way to go because you're connecting that foot arch to the glute being used in that exercise, that corrective exercise, and also this. Well, Chris, we'll hit questions at the end there. And then we also have some single leg hinges. So if you want, single leg hinges are probably the hardest ones to learn because hinges are just generally more challenging because they require a lot of internal rotation. They require a little bit more coordination. But if you're really kind of locked up, you don't have a lot of movement, and you don't have a lot of movement options, doing something like this is a really good way because the wider stance makes it easier for you to turn into your hips. What does this look like? Doesn't this look like an abduct and shift almost? You guys see that? It's very similar. So you could do like an abduct and shift, follow it up with this and strengthen those positions. When we're doing something like this, it's imperative that in the bottom position, you're getting your nose just on the inside edge of that foot, and you have your knee inside of your hip. You can watch me do this here. You see how the knee's inside of the hip, and you have the nose over the inside edge of that foot arch. Big time right there. That's going to really help improve your ability to shift into that side. If you wanted to make it a little bit harder, you can add a weight in both sides. Now, ironically, I'm actually a bigger fan before I move into something like this, where there's actually less loading potential. This would be a great exercise to learn how to shift into the right side and improving internal rotation on the right side. Now, if you wanted to hold a weight in your right hand with your right leg forward, that would help you slightly turn away from that side a little bit better. So you could just flip how this is being done and you could accomplish some lateralization goals. But this is actually harder to coordinate than this because there's a weight that's, well, with the other one, there's a lot more variables. You're less stable, but with this one, you're more stable. So check out what's happening here. I'm just very slightly staggered. I am on my back foot here. I'm loading my backside. So if I want to train more of like a single leg deadlift, I'm more of a fan of learning what this feels like first and then progressing to other more complicated stuff. It's just easier for people to learn. I find that the bridge is gapped much easier. And you could keep this in your program long term. You could really load this up. And boy, this is great. Not only can you load it well, but it really drives a lot of internal rotation on that back hip. And then if you wanted to get a little bit more relative motion focused, but more so loading focused, then you could do something like this. This is going to drive a crap ton of internal rotation on your back leg. Now, you have to be ready for this. If you have very limited hip internal rotation, you're going to feel really locked up getting into this position. You won't be able to, and you're going to feel some impingement in your hip potentially. So make sure that you are ready for this and make sure that you are probably like, your hip internal rotation should be probably at least like 25-ish degrees to try this. I don't have a hard, firm number. That's just a general thing that I've seen. But this also requires the most amount of coordination. So the weight in the opposite side of the leg that we're training the left leg, the weight's in the right hand. This is helping us turn better into the left and opening up the back side and being able to lateralize to the left better. You could also hold the weight in the same side. But with generally deadlifts, there's more of an opportunity to turn into a side and less ability to turn out of a side. So I'm not as much of a fan as training like, pushing out of a given side with a deadlift. You can do it, and we do it, but I'm more of a fan of using this to really like kind of shift into the side that we're not good at shifting into. Upper body keys, you want to focus on alternating presses and rows with your stack. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can do this, but ultimately, you want to make sure that you're feeling that space in between your shoulder blades and your spine. If you're rowing, you don't want to squeeze your shoulders back and down. Think about it like this. If I'm doing a row and I squeeze my shoulder back first and then I pull, the muscles that we're trying to target in a row are between your shoulder blades and your spine, right? Like your rhomboids, some of your traps. If you're squeezing your shoulder back first, you're effectively taking your shoulder blade to an end range of motion before you even start the movement. So you can't actually leverage those muscles to bring your shoulder with your arm back because they're already too short. It's the same thing as like putting a band around your knees and squeezing your glutes hard and trying to descend into a squat. You're literally shortening the thing that's going to help you get out of that. So it doesn't really like add up. So let your arm actually move. I like to cue movement through the elbow when we're rowing because that will make sure we have the emphasis and the intention to move through our arm, and the shoulder blade will take care of itself in many, many cases. Keep your eyes neutral and breathe through it. If your goal is to restore relative motion, your goal is to feel better and move better, regardless of what you're doing, breathe through it. There gets to a certain point where you can't anymore, and I understand that. But if you're just doing, like 3 sets of 12 or whatever, 3 sets of 10, 3 sets of 8, like breathe through it. Inhale on the easy part through your nose, exhale on the hard part through your mouth. And then it's going to help you really not be as locked up as a lot of people are who just hold their breath and brace really hard. Here are some upper body pressing exercises that I think are really wonderful. And again, they start with the easiest ones, and then we progressively get into more challenging ones. So an incline push-up with the feet against the wall is really great to start. Love that. Now, if you wanted to make it a little bit more asymmetrical, what you could do is you could add a little bit of an offset. So just Trevor's left hand is on there. Now, this is a little bit of a complicated concept, but let's break this down really quick. If I am elevating my left hand, my right arm is reaching further than my left hand, which means I'm turning to the left. So if you wanted to improve the ability to turn to the left, you could do that. Now, you could then just get down to the floor and do it like this, and everything else would still apply. You don't even have to use the elevation or the offset. And also on a push-up, I understand that sometimes wrists can be an issue, so using a dumbbell is totally appropriate as well. If you want to learn the basics of pressing without using your low back too much, a dumbbell floor press is really great for that because it's not going to allow you to cheat and arch your low back. A lot of people just use their low back to push the weight up. You don't want to do that. Breathing through this, stacking your wrist over your elbow, it's big time for that. Eventually, you can progress to this. All the while, you would be using more and more weight. And if you wanted to put your feet down to those pegs, that'd be totally fine. If you're going to train your pecs, you want to make sure that you're at least a 45-degree angle here. If you're flared out like this, you're actually training your front delt muscle. If you're down here, now you're getting more pec. So that's an important key. I like to cue like a 45-degree angle of the wrist for that. There's a single arm variation. But then once we start to really load people, we start to now look like this, to where we're driving through the floor into those plates. And now you are going to have a little bit more of a back arch, but it shouldn't be so much to where your rib cage is excessively flaring. You should be able to feel that space between your shoulder blades and the spine. If you want to get a little bit more overhead, now here's the thing, guys. An overhead press, like when you see people like press overhead with a dumbbell, it's not a super good exercise. Like, just if your goal is to train your shoulders, it's not that effective. Lateral raises and things like that are way more effective for training your delts than doing like an overhead press. It's really like, I'm not the biggest fan of it for muscle building, or like if you want to build strength in that position, that's great. But if you're going to go overhead and let's say you want to train your upper pec muscle, well, in order to optimize the ability to target your upper pec muscle, you don't need to go into that much overhead mobility. I think you just need, it's somewhere between like 100 and 110 degrees of overhead motion. So your arms position relative to your trunk, if this was 90, it's like right up here. That's all you really need to get your upper pec going. So putting your feet on the wall is a really good way to make sure you don't overextend. And it's a really good way to keep your stack too. Because the biggest thing with overhead stuff like this is people just arch their back, and they just use that as an orientation compensation. Here's some upper body pulling exercises. So a really good way, again, so what's the goal of a row? It's to use your upper back muscles, maybe your lats, and not use your lower back. So putting yourself in a short seated position is going to ensure that you can't cheat through your low back, and you have to use some of those upper back muscles. Now we have a lat focused row and we have more of an upper back focused row. If you want your lat muscles working more, pull your elbow in closer to your body. If you want your upper back muscles working well, then use more of like a softball's distance in between your humerus, your arm bone, and your side. That's generally going to be a better way to go. Now, a long seated position is also a great way to go if your goal is to not use your low back. It's just an alternative there if you want to consider that. One might be more comfortable than the other. A chest supported row is fantastic because you're going to naturally be in that position you saw in the stacking video. When you row, you don't need to go too far behind your body, just in line with your trunk, the back of your trunk, or just a tiny bit behind it is all you need. More than that, you're not really using your back muscles very effectively in many cases. And then a one arm supported row. We've seen these before. We spend a lot of time cueing this properly. So notice how I get a little bit of a reach and dragging the elbow back. That's very ideal right there if the goal is to get that lat working well. Notice how you're not seeing a lot of bent over rows. Reason for that is because if I want to train my back muscles, getting in a hinge, like a deadlift position, and then doing rows, my low back is going to fatigue either earlier or at the same time, and I'm going to risk my low back fatigue interfering with my ability to actually target my upper back muscles or my lats. So if I want to train my upper back, I'm going to put myself in a position where my low back can't take over or get too tired before the actual goal muscles get tired. This is probably my favorite basic row. It's just really, really effective and it's easy to set up. When we do it, it's important that just a general goal, general good thing to keep in mind with you guys with any exercise you use that's cable resistance. It's oftentimes helpful to align your arm path with the actual cable. You see how there's a pretty straight line from my forearm through the cable? That's going to optimize your ability to use your back muscles. So the same thing would be true for like a tricep extension with the cable. If that cable is coming straight through here, it's money. All right. Now, core training. This is where you can get a lot of bang for your buck. This is where you have a lot of opportunity to restore relative motions and improve your assessments and also just cook your abs. Many people focus way too much on the six-pack abs. If you're properly stacking, guys, and you're stacking under load and you're using effective strategies to brace, your six-pack's getting worked for sure. And so are your obliques, but many people just oftentimes think they want a six-pack and they just, hammer crunches and everything. That's fine, but your obliques and deep abs are way more important for functional movement and posture and rotation and getting your rib cage to move fluidly. So train in a variety of different positions. Some general things I like to do to train, this is more of like, I guess you would say like the six-pack ab movements. Now you can adjust this depending on the person, but see how rounded my back is here? This is driving a lot of expansion into my back. So this is like doing short-seated breathing, but in a plank. So you're getting a lot of back expansion here. If you had someone that was more sway back, then you would just not narrow the grip as much and you would make sure the sternum stays up more. And you would just probably move a little bit more forward. Walk your arms forward, that is. I like this supine dead bug too because it cues the low back to stay flat. That's really nice. And that's going to also drive some opening of your back. If you wanted to progress that other one, something you can do is go up into this, shift to one side, hold that. Oh, it's killer. It hurts so good. And you go to the other side and you just breathe through this. This is getting some alternating opening of your rib cage. And this is challenging. The goal is how level can you keep your hips as you do it? And then with this is another nice progression that I like to use. Trains a little bit more rotation. And then if we get into actual, side plank positions, This is where I like, if you're going to add some core stuff in, you want to pick a couple of things and you like your current regimen or whatever, these are really, really nice. And you're going to see why that is in just a second. Let me close some tabs. There we go. The towel is not necessary, but if you're getting shoulder pain in a side plank, putting a towel in this position will actually make it easier for you to push through the ground and not irritate your shoulder. So that's probably the easiest general side plank that you can do. If you wanted to make it a longer lever, you could do it like this. Sometimes I also just twist my hand down like that. That can also accomplish the same thing. But then, now check this one out. What does this look like? Getting up into this side plank and reaching the leg away from you. What does this look like? Looks like an abduct and shift, doesn't it? If you wanted to add a little bit of an easier way to reach, you could reach like that. Absolutely brutal. And then there's a nice side plank with rotation progression series. I'm a big fan of this. I think that these work really, really well. Just simply turning into the downside can help drive some rotation and the ability to better turn into a given side. So let's say I'm right lateralized. Doing this, any side plank on your left side would be helpful, but turning into the left side more will drive even more opening of the backside of your rib cage and a better ability to turn into the left side. And then to challenge yourself further, cross connect side plank is money. Again, if I'm right lateralized, I would do this with my left side down more so. And a question I know I'm going to get is, should I only do this on my left side if I'm right lateralized? Or if I'm left lateralized, should I only do this on my right side? I would say consider using a ratio of maybe like 2 to 1, maybe like 2 sets of stuff on your left for every 1 set that you do on your right. And then dynamic side plank bridge is the final one, which is just disgusting. But this is going to really loosen up your rib cage. You get a lot of rib movement here. You get a lot of oblique working. That should keep you busy for a while. Now let's talk about some general programming strategies. If you guys have never actually weight trained before, I've just given you a lot of different exercises that you can plug into. And you're also going to see it in the programs themselves. But the way that I like to think about it is if you're going to weight train 2-3 times a week, just do full body. Just do, all of those squat, hinge, upper push, upper pull, like just fit that into a given training session. Don't kill yourself. Don't use too much volume. And we'll talk about that in a second too. But if you're going to do 4 to 6 times a week, I like using a push-pull split. So I might do alternating days of upper pressing with lower pulling. So that way the muscles of upper pulling and lower pushing can get a rest. So then you would go like upper press, lower pull, and then go upper pull, lower press. And then you would kind of alternate with that. And that can work really well for anywhere between 4 to 6 times a week. My set and rep recommendations are somewhere between 2 to 4 sets of 6 to 12 reps. That's ideal for hypertrophy in many cases. If you're going to do a heavier lift and it's going to be more challenging, rest 2 to 3 minutes, 1 to 2 minutes on your lighter lifts. And you generally want to have, like, let's say your heavier lift, your big squat for the day, like that should be the first thing that you generally do. And you want to use less reps on that, probably in the 6 range, the 6 to 8. And then as you do more of your accessory lifts, like let's say you're doing some bicep curls, some split squats, whatever, do that in the 10 to 12 range. Generally, I like to warm up with less weight and progressively add. I usually do like 1 to 2 warm-up sets within that. Don't go straight to putting a bunch of weight on the bar. Like no matter what the thing is, unless it's like a bicep curl or like a tricep extension or something really simple, make sure you do warm up. I see a lot of people just not doing that. And that's not going to help you pattern a good stack. That's not going to help you pattern the right things. Progression is very important. When we progress, generally, I like to start with less sets and less reps. When you start off strength training or weight training, I would very much recommend that you start with a lightweight, something that you can do for like 3 sets of 12 reps And you can end that third set of 12 reps knowing you had at least 2 to 3 good reps left. So that way it was easy and you can spend time patterning the right things. Even if you're an experienced, let's say, gym goer, recreational lifter, and you want to start incorporating some of this stuff to better train your stack, back off the weights for a little bit. As you use more of the corrective exercises to help restore some relative motion, get your body to back off a little bit so you can heal better and then get yourself in a good position to set yourself up for the future. Do the same thing, like whether you're doing 3 sets of 6, 3 sets of 12, whatever, make sure that you're having a lot of room to progress. If you start off and you do 3 sets of 6 and that last rep was incredibly challenging and you could barely do it, the next week you're not going to be able to progress. You're going to hit a wall. But you can get this nice sort of linear progression if you start off with, let's say, 3 sets of 12 reps, and on the 12th rep of the last set, you're like, yeah, I had some room to go there. The next week, you can either add 2 reps with the same weight on each set, or you can add 5 pounds or 2.5 kilos. So generally the way I like to do it is like, let's say I'm doing 3 sets of 10 with 100 pounds. The next week, you could do three sets of 12 with 100 pounds, or you could do 3 sets of 10 with 105 pounds. And then if you can't progress weight, then just progress reps until you get to 2 more for each set, and then you increase the weight a little bit more. It's quite simple. And doing that can keep you making progress for years, potentially. Okay. Now, again, you will have access to a lot of those programs. I think there's going to be 3 or 4 total ones. And it's going to be very helpful for you to visualize that. So if you're kind of like having a hard time putting the pieces together in your head, those programs are coming. And then once you rewatch this, things will make a lot more sense. One second. Okay. Now, ultimately, I know a lot of you are wondering about lifestyle and what are the big rocks? Like, how do I sit better? How do I stand better? How long should the exercises stick for, etc. But these are the big 3. And I know this is so cliche and it's just really kind of like, oh God, like this is, are you guys really going to want to do this type of thing? Like a lot of people talk about this, but it's important because if you're not getting at least 6,000 steps a day, 7 hours of sleep, and if you're sitting for hours at a time without breaking that up with intermittent, potentially changing positions or doing some drills, you really don't have any business saying that these things aren't working, because you have to be able to be active enough and have enough variability within your posture and movement for these things to be able to work in the first place. If you sit for 8 hours a day and you do 2 sets of your 90-90 hip lift and your abduct and shift, and you feel good for an hour, but then it stops working, it's like, okay, well, are those 2 sets going to offset 8 hours of sitting? No, of course not. So these are the big rocks. They have to be in place. And if you do, you're going to set yourself up for success for sure. Many people ask, should I change the way that I walk? And my answer would be absolutely not. Do not, under any circumstances, unless you have gotten in a car wreck and you're partially paralyzed and you're relearning how to walk again, don't try to change the way you walk. You will not be successful because there's a couple of reasons. First, there's been some research that suggests that people that change the way they walk consciously become much less metabolically efficient. So I would assume, and this is just me inferring, but I think it makes sense, if you're less metabolically efficient, you're not using as much relative motion and as much fluidity within your biomechanics. Therefore, you're probably actually straining other areas more than they should be. If you're metabolically efficient and things are working together well, you're efficiently using relative motion. And you're able to use muscles and joint actions in the gait cycle in a way that works for you. So the body is very smart. It's very, very smart. And sometimes we think it's stupid, but it actually knows a lot more than we give it credit for. And it is constantly aware of your previous injuries, the current issues you have in your body, your inflammation. It knows how long your leg is relative to the other one, depending on the position of your pelvis. It's aware of your vision and the peripheral world around you in relationship to your central vision. It's aware of your hearing, and it's constantly scanning all this stuff, and it's putting you in the best possible gait pattern and posture it knows how to do to let you do what you need to do to accomplish the task, whether that's getting up and walking to the other room, or whether that's running a marathon, or whether that's navigating through the dark. Your body is very much aware of what it needs to do to accomplish the goal. It's truly amazing. So if we're going to try to consciously override the way that we walk, we're going to be giving our body an input that is going against that self-organization strategy. And we're going to end, like, let's say our right foot turns out when we walk, and we don't like that. So we're going to turn our right foot in. Well, maybe the right foot is turning out because it's trying to help your body accomplish something that your foot can't do on its own without turning out that right foot. So you might, yes, start walking with a straighter foot, but now your low back starts to hurt because your foot can't access a given position, and your low back is taking a beating because you can't actually push off properly or as well as you could before. So let these exercises unconsciously change your habits and your posture. Let them do the work. It's truly amazing how well it can work if you just let your body do its thing. Now, is there ever a world in which like trying to alter your standing and sitting can be helpful? Maybe. And I'll talk about that in a second. But I do want to drive home the idea of doing the exercises well, getting a good pair of shoes, potentially working on your foot if you need to. That's a different course. But that stuff is going to ultimately be the most important stuff. If you're going to sit, now there is no best sitting or standing, just like I said, but there's generally things that are going to help you feel better if you're feeling kind of locked up. If you're sitting, feel your sit bones evenly on both sides, as relatively evenly as you can. Eyes at the horizon level, and feel your heels grounded on the floor. As long as you're doing those things and you're keeping your sternum generally up, you're probably doing all right. And if you're feeling stiff or something doesn't feel quite right, you can ultimately just check in with yourself and make sure you have a chair that has enough of a sense of the ground, meaning that you don't have a super padded chair. You have something where you can literally feel those sit bones. That's going to be really important too. And it's not so high that your feet can't touch the ground and feel grounded on the floor. Driving is an absolute killer. I bet you guys know what I mean with that. If you're in chronic pain, driving sucks. Now, there is no best way to drive, but one thing I've found to be particularly helpful is if I'm driving and I'm really starting to feel like I have one area in my left low back where I herniated a disc about 10 years ago. That if I'm ever going to be in pain, that's the area that's going to hurt, but I know what exercises can instantly make it feel better. But if I'm driving, I don't have that ability to do that. But what I do is, let's say I'm here. What I will consciously think about doing is pulling my left leg behind my right. And I'm going to try and feel my sit bones evenly still, but shifting like this and very slightly pushing my knee in activates my adductor, my inner thigh muscle, because I'm right lateralized. So I'm defaulting to this position. So I can shift and push the knee in a little bit on the left. And that is really helpful for me. It really helps me get instantaneous relief of my low back. So hopefully that's a helpful tip for some of you guys. For standing, it's even harder to do this properly because standing, we're constantly shifting and we're not even aware of it. But if you are starting to feel some irritation, something doesn't feel quite right, feel your weight evenly distributed through your foot. So your heel, the base of your big toe, the base of your little toe. Stay tall. Imagine there's a string pulling your head up, but then exhale to feel your rib cage come down. And that's all you got to do. That's going to help you really feel yourself grounded better. And it's going to align your spine curves more effectively. Check in with yourself and see if you're constantly on your toes, which a lot of people are. Find your heels, bring your rib cage down. Things will tend to feel a lot better. Now, shoes are something that I think really can make a difference. There's a lot of people out there that wear glorified socks. Sabrina, could you bring me my Brooks over there, please? A lot of shoes are not designed to give you a better sense and relationship of the floor. Now, barefoot shoes can work. I think we've had this discussion already a little bit, but I'm going to reiterate that some people that have a history of wearing very cushiony shoes, think about like your Hokas, if you know what those are. Think about like your Adidas Ultra Boost or like your Nike super, super cushiony, like you're walking on a cloud type of thing. Those shoes are terrible for keeping your foot in contact and keeping a nice relationship with the ground. So if you think about ground reaction force and just walking through the world, your foot needs to push into the ground as the ground pushes back up at you. That's basic physics. So the most important thing for our foot and our posture is to have a relationship with the ground where those foot contacts can be sensed and you can guide your foot through the gait cycle and the rest of your body follows. But in order to do that, you have to literally be able to sense the ground. So some people have been wearing those crappy shoes for so long, you get them out of that, they go barefoot. It's like, holy crap, my life is so much better because now I actually can feel the ground. But there's other people that have been wearing other shoes and they go to barefoot and now they feel actually worse. And you don't hear from those people because the people that, praise barefoot shoes are the ones that speak the loudest. But you don't hear oftentimes people that come in and say like, well, actually I do. And they say, I actually got worse because of barefoot shoes. I feel significantly worse in my low back. Or they didn't do anything for me. Those are the stories that I hear. That's because those people's feet aren't functional enough to improve their relationship with the ground when they go barefoot. Their feet are too dysfunctional. So they need a shoe that will allow them to properly find the right foot contacts and have their foot guided through the gait cycle more effectively. Key qualities of a good shoe. Now I'm going to give you like extremely general recommendations, but they are going to be helpful for a lot of people. But if you want to know generally what shoe will improve your relationship with the ground, there's a couple of qualities. First, now this is a Brooks Adrenaline 23. These are the shoes I wear around a lot. They're phenomenal. But they have all the good qualities. The first is that the heel should not push in easily. I'm pushing on it pretty hard right now, and it's not folding in. If this folds in like most shoes do, your heel is not getting proper stability, and it is not allowing it's called your calcaneus, your heel. You're not getting your heel secured to the floor, and it's not going to give you that nice, like sort of, think about it like being like a backboard, and how it's giving you the ability to like feel your heel pressing against something. That's really important for improving the relationship with the ground. On top of that, you need this to not overly collapse in when you give it lateral pressure. If it totally folds in, which I can't really do, but you can imagine if it folded in, that would also compromise your heel stability. The last thing is that it should bend only through the toe box because that's where your foot bends. If you have one of those glorified socks, it bends any which way, like your Nike Flyknit, probably isn't that great. And then obviously it should be symmetrical. If you're looking at it from the back, you should see an even height. If it's not, that's a huge problem. You don't want that shoe under pretty much any circumstances. So if you're ever curious, just run that test and see what's going on. I think the most important things though are like that heel doesn't bend in too much, and it has that lateral stability. Toe box is also important, but I think you guys already kind of know that. I don't need to reiterate the importance of a wider toe box for some people. The problem is that many wide toe box shoes have crap heel stability and they bend anywhere. So that's important to consider. My recommended pairs that work for the most amount of people, not everyone, but the most amount, if you have lower foot arches, and this is subjective, we don't have time to get into what's a low foot arch, what's a high foot arch, just, generally speaking, a low foot arch is best off generally in a Brooks Adrenaline GTS 23 or a Brooks Addiction 15. A mid foot arch, the GTS 23, a high foot arch, the Brooks Ghost 15 works really well. Now, how do you know that you have the right pair of shoes? Well, usually what I do with my clients is I say, hey, go get these pairs of shoes, bring them in. I'll usually recommend 2 to 3 pairs, and there's more than this, but this is the basic stuff that works the best. Bring them in. I'm going to test you in all of them. So if you have the right pair of shoes on, let's say you're wearing a Nike Flyknit and your back hurts all the time. Well, you have low foot arches. You go get yourself a pair of the Brooks Adrenaline GTS 23s and the Addiction 15s. You try those pairs of shoes on, and then you go for go walk 20 steps and then come back. That's enough for your body to know and decrease tension in your body. So if you do it right and you tie those shoes properly, which is, another thing, you should instantly get improvements in all of your assessments. Your shoulder abduction, shoulder internal rotation, external rotation, your trunk rotation, they should all feel better. Now, the degree of which they change is relative to the individual, but you should see a systemic improvement. But let's say you tried on those Brooks Adrenaline GTS 23s and you didn't see an improvement, or it's marginal, or you got worse. Then you know it's really not good for you. Then you try the Brooks Addiction 50, and like, oh, this is much better. Those are the shoes that you would keep, you'd return the other ones. Let's talk about sleep. So pillows were made for our necks, not for our heads. That's a very important distinction to make that very few people actually understand. So if you're putting your pillow and you're sleeping on your back like that, that is closing off your airway. Airway is the most important thing during sleep. If you do not have a healthy managed airway, you will snore, you will have sleep apnea, you will reset all of your progress as soon as you wake up. So we need to have the chin somewhat pointing towards the ceiling. So putting the pillow in a position where it supports our neck is more important. I do not like stomach sleeping. Stomach sleeping extends you and it torques your head to one side. If you have to sleep on your stomach, put a pillow underneath your lowest rib cage. That's going to give you a little bit less extension, and that's going to allow you to probably just not irritate your back as much. Side sleeping is often best. Now, if you're going to side sleep, again, pillow underneath the head and neck in a healthy way. I don't have pillows, I'm using towels, obviously, but you guys get the point. And then a pillow underneath the lowest part of the rib cage to allow yourself to have a little bit of an even spine so that way you're not sinking down, and then something in between the knees. This will help align you, and this will be really good for keeping your adaptations better. But the problem is, and this is something we can't control, what if you move? What if, I don't know, you don't have that many pillows? What if you hate sleeping on your side? Well, there's only so much we can do, right? I'll give you a couple more pieces of advice, but I really do prefer side sleeping in many cases. And it's really not going to make things better. It's just going to prevent things from getting worse. Let's see, is there anything else I wanted to say about that? Oh, yes. The actual bed itself. Please do not sleep on a water bed. Please do not sleep on a soft bed. Soft beds are the antithesis of healthy sleep. They're going to take away your sense of the ground. You know, people that grind at night, they clench their jaw, they squeeze, and they just like tear apart their teeth. Those people are looking for stability when they sleep. Those people are ungrounded when they sleep. So they're looking for stability through their jaw. A firmer bed is generally better. The human body has evolved over a long period of time to sleep on harder surfaces, not softer surfaces. Same thing with the shoes. If you're wearing a pair of shoes that takes away your relationship with the ground, your back starts hurting in many cases. But if you sleep on a nice, somewhat firm, but it can have some give, you know, but if it's too soft, that's going to be problematic. One quote I love, this is from a guy that wrote a book called The Oxygen Advantage. He says, if you don't breathe through your nose at night, you have no idea what it feels like to get a good night's rest. Now, that is true. That is so true. And I learned that more and more with more clients that I work with over the years. If you're breathing through your mouth while you sleep, not only are you going to reset your progress, but your airway is very much unmanaged. And that's a big sign of it. You're not getting good deep rest. So using nasal strips and mouth tape can be game changing for some people. For others, it's not enough and they need something else we're going to talk about in a minute, but you have to make sure you're breathing through your nose at night. Now with the mouth tape, there's about a 3-day adjustment period, and you're not going to like it very much for most people, but just give yourself 3-4 days to adjust to it, and then you start to see some cool things happen in many cases. Okay, now let's talk about the people that have a hard time getting any change, or they have potentially other things going on. Now, on the practical application session, we got pretty good changes with every single, like we had, I don't remember, like 70, 80 people on the call. Everyone was doing great except for about 10% of us. And the people that I checked in with all had an inability to shut off their neck. And that's why I harped on it for the last 4 weeks, because if you have a neck that won't shut off, it's very likely you have some sort of cranial or neck asymmetry that is unmanaged. And that could be because of your jaw. That could be because of a crossbite, which is oftentimes related to your jaw. You could have a tongue tie. You could have visual dysfunction, and your neck is trying to help create stability for you, or your vision is so asymmetrical to the point where like there's not much you can do. You're like, let's say like you don't have peripheral vision on your left relative to your right. Your body doesn't feel safe going left, but that's so rare. It's very rare that vision is driving everything. Or you could have a foot issue, which is much, much more common. So these are all things that are going to make it harder for you to either create adaptations or hold on to adaptations. Only 10 to 15% of these of people, so you know, the people are on this call, only probably about 7 or 8 of you probably have something like this that genuinely needs to be looked at by a qualified practitioner. That's beyond the scope of this course. If you're not getting changes, I would say it is very, very likely that you're probably just not doing the right exercises, or you're not doing the exercises properly. But that's what the practical application session was for. If you have to, there's a couple of steps that you can take. This is the order of operations that I recommend. First, make sure you're doing the drills right, especially if you're having a hard time holding on to adaptations. Secondly, check your lifestyle. Are you doing the big 3? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you walking enough? Are you making sure you're changing positions as you sit? Are you getting a standing desk and you're being able to go from sitting to standing every hour or so? Check your shoe wear and foot, because that's probably where the issue is coming from for most people. Unless you can't shut off your neck when you breathe or do these exercises, then you have a neck problem. But if you don't feel your neck engage, and something I really want to make clear, and we did make clear in the practical application session, is someone was like, hey, you're talking about this a lot, and I want to make sure that I'm not feeling my neck. So like I don't, but you're making me worried and anxious that I actually am and I don't realize it. I don't want to make it like that. So if you feel your neck, you're going to feel it. It's not going to be like am I feeling it situation or not. It's going to be like, yeah, I feel it and I can't shut it off. You're going to know. So if you don't know, it's probably not a problem. And it's probably more of a shoe wear and foot issue. You probably have something isolated at your foot. So let's say, you're doing a sideline glute max exercise. You're trying to connect your foot arch to your glute max working better. Well, if you get up and your foot arch is dysfunctional, you might be able to find it on your side in a really safe and easy position. But once you stand up, your foot arch can't work with the ground well. You're going to lose it within a matter of seconds once you start walking potentially, or you'll lose it within an hour or 2. But the foot is probably the most common thing. That's a different course, unfortunately, but there are a lot of YouTube videos I have out there for that can be very helpful. If you think you may have a tongue tie issue, I have a resource right here by my colleague and my friend, Catherine Kangas. She is probably the best myofunctional therapist I know of, and I know many. She gives an overview and a little talk about why tongue ties happen, how they're important, how can you tell if you have one, stuff like that is really, really great. So you can check that. And also, if you have big visual problems, that could also be something to think about, but I doubt it. It's very unlikely, but I have seen it. I have a case study on my YouTube channel actually of someone who did have a bad pair of glasses. We fixed that. We gave him some different training. All of a sudden his life has changed, but I don't want you guys to fixate on this stuff too much. It's very easy for people to try these exercises and not get something immediately amazing happen and go, oh, it's my tongue. Oh, it's my foot. It's probably not. It's probably that you just need a little bit more practice. Finally, you can consult with a myofunctional therapist and or get a sleep study. A sleep study is something you can do in a professional environment, or there's at-home tests. A myofunctional therapist is a tongue doctor pretty much, or an airway doctor. They're going to help you in a way that I could never. That's outside of the scope of my practice and what I can legally do. But you could talk to Catherine. I'm sure she and other people in her network are taking clients. I don't get anything from that. I just believe in what they do. And I think that they do really great work. So if you're on the fence with the tongue tie thing, watch the video. And if you heavily identify with it, reach out to her. There's a couple of sleep studies. If you tried the mouth tape and you tried the nasal strips and it's not getting the job done, okay, maybe consider one of these two tests. This one's $110. It's actually kind of hard to find right now on the internet, but it is a good test and it'll give you some good information. This one's a little bit more thorough and it's more expensive for sure, but it's, I mean, if you're going to spend $420 to completely change your life, I think that's probably worth it. It's a very slow to load, but here it is right through here. And this is only when you're at like a worst case scenario. You're like, all right, you know, stuff's not sticking. I'm getting changes, but you know, I wake up feeling worse. That's a big clue. And, you know, the mouth tape, nasal strips, not getting the job done, not really noticing a difference. Now it's time to get a sleep study. Because if sleep, if foot, if your tongue, if your airway, if those are your problems, you're not going to see anything good happen long term until you get those things fixed. And that's just me being honest with you. So I hope that's helpful. I hope that that gives you guys that are, you know, maybe in the 10%ers, like a little bit of hope, because you absolutely can get this stuff sorted out. And I've seen people have life-changing results by getting a sleep study done and finally figuring it out, or going to a myofunctional therapist and getting their tongue fixed. It's like, wow, life-changing. Like that's the thing. But it is always a process. If you get a tongue tie release, if you do myofunctional therapy, if you go through the sleep study thing and you know, have sleep apnea, like it's a process. You still have to put in a lot of work. And it's not just going to be a magical fix, but once you have the fix, you're really on the right track. So thank you guys. I appreciate you being here for the whole course. And I hope that that was helpful. It's the first time I've ever done a course like this. I hope it went well. I think that it gave you guys a lot of really great information. And if you want to continue learning with me, you have a couple of options. At the end of this call and a little bit later today, I'm going to send you guys a 33% off code to get into the beginner biomechanics course, which is designed for people that want to go from the next level in this course. So we have all sorts of different people in here. We have regular people, we have some trainers, we have some other types of practitioners, some yoga instructors, whatever. If you guys want the next level, this is what it is. And it's a 4-week course. Again, it's very digestible. It'll have a lot more exercises. It's a lot more in terms of the biomechanics and the nitty gritty of that, but without getting too complicated. I like to make it also very much digestible. There's a lot of live practical application and assessments in it. So you can see me work with more people and get results, which is also really helpful. This will expire within 48 hours. Now, there is another option, and I've been hinting at it, but I also understand that some of you guys, it's beyond your scope to do the actual live biomechanics course. The next one starts in November. It's the real deal. It's a 12-week long course. You guys are set up extremely well to do it if you actually want the whole package. Now, as a side note, there will be an early bird deal that will come out on the 1st of October in a couple of days, and it's going to be a super good deal. But on top of that, I'm willing to give you guys 15% off more on top of that already incredible deal. So I will send that out also in a separate email. But if you're not a practitioner, then I'd recommend the beginner course. But if you are a practitioner, or you just are, I'm honestly, guys, like I've seen people take the live course and do great with it that are just regular people. And that can be a great way to go. Some people in this course may want to become trainers. I don't know. And that's a great way to go. It's a great way to start to really put all the pieces together here. So if you want to do the beginner course, you will get 4 presentations, 4 review sessions, 4 practical application sessions, study guides, reading materials, a bigger exercise library and programs, permanent access to the course materials. All right. So, guys, I have to go in 15 minutes. I have an important professional obligation. So I will be able to take a couple of questions, but then after that, we got to wrap it up. Okay. So let me get out of this screen share. Whoa. Hang on. What's going on here? There we go. All right. Chris, I know you had a question, so hit me with it.
First of all, Connor, thanks. This has been an incredible course. And I think I speak for everyone when I say that. It's been absolutely fantastic. It's really brought everything together for me. So one of my training aims is getting strong. because I play basketball, I have bad knees, and I just want to be able to train my legs hard. But I've always struggled because of my back pain. So I'm hoping that with the progressions you've shown, that I'll be able to get to the point of training without back pain and by addressing my lateralization and so on. So my question is, hopefully when I get to that point and I want to load up heavy, and I'm still, I assume I'm still sort of doing the exercises. If I'm right lateralized, I'm holding the weight in my right hand on, say, the split squat, when I'm doing it with my left leg forward or my right leg forward. So if I'm starting to get heavy and I'm holding a lot of weight in that one hand, how would you deal with that? Do you just get used to it? Or do you maybe have a heavier weight in your right hand and a lighter weight in your left hand?
You nailed it. That's what you would do. You'd have maybe a 15-pound discrepancy between sides. So let's say right lateralized, right legs forward. You have a 45 in your right and a 30 in your left.
Okay, so you just address the imbalance that way. And that way you should be able to build up to similar near max loads as you could do in more traditional lifts.
Totally.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Elizabeth?
Hi, thank you so much for doing this course.
Thank you.
Since you can't be in all places at all times, I had a question about the side sleeping. If you're lateralized to the right, do you prefer we sleep on our left side? Or does it not matter?
That one's tough because of a couple of things. Like, people have a hard time changing their patterns of sleeping. I find it's like, it creates, I mean, personally, for me, if you were to tell me to sleep on the other side, it'd be kind of hard. But if you are able to change that, if you're right lateralized, I would say sleeping on your left side with a pillow underneath your left side is probably good. Or if you're going to be on your right side, that might be an opportunity to actually not have a pillow underneath your right side, because that will crunch you on the left.
Okay. Okay. And then I guess it's beyond the scope of obviously this, and I know you need to run, but I definitely need to have a conversation with somebody about what classes to take next. And also about doing a training or something like that. And it stinks that you're in San Francisco now, because I just left our place there.
Oh, you did? That's funny. Well, you have a couple. I recommend, like, if you feel like you really got this course and you feel like you identify with it heavily, I think you can take the live 12-week course.
Oh, yeah.
I really do. But if you're like on the fence, but you want to learn more, the beginner course is probably the way to go. And also, if you guys do want to come down to San Diego, I'm willing to work with you. You can check out my gym website page. You can be a client. You can come down here for a couple of days, hang out. We'll have a good time. And now that you know kind of like my process, it'll be pretty helpful. So you can absolutely do that as well.
All right. Thank you. And then, all right. So I guess I'll reach out afterwards. And yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Elizabeth. Appreciate you. Peter.
Hey, buddy. Yeah, thank you so much for everything. It's been, I mean, I've been following you for quite some time. I've got pretty much most of your courses, but I just needed everything to kind of come together. But for me personally, whenever I push anything and push exercises, pull exercises, the push gives me pain in my left hand, left shoulder. Pulling just totally lights up my spine. Like anything pulling, I just seem to get so tight in my upper body, in my neck. So my question really was, should I just focus on getting my pelvis in a better position firstly with the corrective exercises, and will that then kind of relate to my upper body rotation?
That could be several things. I would say that it could be a form thing, but if you've done some of my other stuff, you probably have that dialed in, but maybe not too. Like sometimes you might be surprised, but I would say, yeah, if pulling is giving you issues, you're probably extending maybe, and you're probably not setting up your thoracic spine relative to your lumbar spine in a good neutral position for that. Or you need to constrain yourself into a position where you literally can't really screw it up too much. So it's a pretty loaded question. Honestly, I would say that generally though, I would get yourself into a position where your shoulder abduction on both sides is like 45-ish degrees, feels pretty good without any issues. Your trunk rotation is like 70 degrees, both sides without any issues. That's going to be a pretty good sign you're in a good position. And then from there, it's likely more of a form thing or like proper exercise selection thing.
Yeah, because at this point, my shoulder abduction is like maybe like 10 degrees on one side and like 5 on the other.
Yeah. No,
so I'm completely blocked up.
You have no space to actually pull that scat back.
I don't.
So you're just going to extend and your back's going to hurt.
Exactly. And on the left side, I grate and I grind. It just it just rubs right across my rib cage and my scapula.
Short seated breathing, probably. You might even want to use a balloon on it, honestly. Short seated breathing with a right arm reach, maybe. And then like maybe consider the glute max, maybe, or the abduction shift, one of those things, or even like it. Are you right lateralized?
Fully left. Like when I
Fully
just kind
left.
of rest my body, I'm so far to the left
Okay.
when
Well,
I'm stood.
sideline grounding on the right side and a short seated
Yeah.
breathing with a left arm reach then.
Left arm reach, short lever. Okay. Perfect. I'll give those a shot, mate. Thank you very much.
No problem. Rachel?
Hi, thanks again for doing all this. I just have two quick questions. One is, you know, I struggled a little bit with the practical session a few days ago, and actually getting my foot to contact with the wall well, because of supination issues. And so, yeah.
Like it's too supinated?
Yeah, like I couldn't get the interior part of my foot, like the ball and
see.
the interior heel to really contact with the wall. And so, Trevor, I think, recommended the wedge supination drill, in the chat.
Okay.
And so I didn't know, I couldn't find those little wedges. In the video, it says they're on Amazon somewhere, but could you send out a link for that?
Yeah. I will say there might be some confusion there because if your foot can't make contact with the wall properly, what drill were you talking about?
It's just called the wedge supination drill is what it's.
Sorry, I mean to clarify.
Oh, the second exercise.
The sideline glute max.
Yes.
I think you probably, are you left or right lateralized?
Right.
Right. Okay. And your right foot arch is very high.
Well, it's both of them are, you know, the interior parts of both my feet kind of lift off the ground quite a bit.
Probably need the pronation drill, I would say. There might have been a miscommunication. So I would say the wedge pronation drill is likely going to be more helpful for you. You can use any wedges off of Amazon. They don't have to be any particular ones.
Yeah, I couldn't find small ones. I could only find the big ones like you showed today in the thing.
Those,
so,
honestly, for a very high arch like yourself, that actually would probably be just fine, honestly.
Okay, because they showed like 3 tiny little
Yes, those are Gary Ward's. He's one of our mentors, if you will. He's a really brilliant guy with the foot. Love his stuff. Highly recommend it. He has wedges. Let me see if I can find them. Anatomy and motion wedges. Yeah, I got them right here, but they're unfortunately in the UK. So they're really expensive for what they are, honestly, but they are great wedges, but you can use anything. I'll link them though for you right here.
Okay, and it sounds like you would probably go over this more in the foot course. I didn't know if you were gonna potentially provide any discounts for doing the foot course after this. Okay, great.
I will send you guys, yeah, you know, since you asked, I wasn't thinking about that, but that actually probably would be a good idea. I'd be happy to give you guys a nice discount on that course too. I'll link that in the email too.
Great, I appreciate all that so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and get a good pair of shoes. Put on a pair of shoes as you do it too, like getting a nice shoe with like a support like the Brooks Ghost 15 and then doing your drills in that could be a good like bridge.
Okay, great. I will try that. Thank you.
Matt?
Hey, Connor. Quick question. Like probably everybody here, you know, I've had injuries and surgeries, years of probably being in the same position, right? Like back surgeries, knee surgeries, and I'm left lateralized. My question is, after years of being locked in that position, right, as you're opening up space and like, let's say that left hip, right, to shift over to that left side. I know that I would imagine like tendons, ligaments, things that probably haven't moved or atrophied in a long time are starting to move. I've always had like the pain in the like low left back, maybe like QL muscle. I don't really know, but since we've started doing this, I've noticed pain, not pain, but like sensations migrate towards sort of like the like the inside of the glute, like the deep glute, where honestly, like the femur feels like it connects. So normal to feel new pain sensations, and am I or are we opening ourselves up potentially to injuries if we go too hard too soon?
Are you right or left lateralized?
Left.
Clearly?
Yeah, very left. Yeah.
Okay. Then I would say no. If you feel any new pain experience, that is very, very oftentimes not a good thing. And what drills are you doing right now?
I'm doing a lot of the side lying with the roller between the legs, and kind of the one where you push your knee forward and the
Glute
90
max.
on the wall, you know, where your feet, and from a video I saw one of the first times I watched you with my right leg up in the air, my left hand forward.
Oh yeah, the 90-90 alternating crossover thing.
That's pretty much, I've been trying to keep it pretty easy. We finished the course because I didn't want to add a lot and kind of mess anything up.
Yeah. So with that in mind, yeah, there's definitely like some room for you to like do way more effective stuff. Do the sideline grounding and get that ball, that whatever deep in your groin, and do that on your right side. Get really good at just connecting your right abs to your right foot pressure. And then once you get really good at that, the progression is to add a very slight squeeze with both legs. And that's going to help open up the backside of your pelvis, should make a good difference, but only do that when you can master that first progression for like 3 sets of 10 breaths without screwing anything up or feeling your low back, feeling your neck. You may want to consider messing around with a posterior hip capsule stretch on your right side, or maybe even your left potentially. Just see what happens. But regardless of which side you do it on, if you do it on the right side, the proper side, then your assessments on both sides should improve. So I'd say try that in the short term, that posterior hip capsule stretch on either side. But then for sure, sideline grounding on the right side, adding that ball squeeze. Once you master that, then add that right sideline left glute max.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right, I got time for 2 more. Ruth?
Thanks so much for this. I'm so glad you did this. I had a question. You've got the lower body course coming up. That's the foot thing, and then you got the beginner body bio. When are those? Which one's coming first?
So which course is coming first?
Yeah.
Okay, so the lower limb and foot course is already a pre-recorded course. I already did it live. So that is something that you can just access immediately. The beginner biomechanics course is the same thing. You can access that immediately as a pre-recorded course, and you guys get indefinite access to those forever. And the live November course starts obviously in November. Signups are going to be all throughout the next month.
Okay.
If you're really trying to go all in and get the best possible experience, I would say do that 4-week beginner course or the foot course in the next month, and that will set you up even better for the live course. But with the live course, everything is recorded, uploaded the same day, and you also get access to that forever. So that's you can do it self-paced if you wanted to as well.
Thank you. And if I think I've been getting about like 10 degrees improvement across the board. If I do like all the exercises, like on Wednesday, all the exercises, I improved maybe 10 degrees on everything.
It's not good enough.
Does that means it's not, that means that there's another issue
potentially. So that would be 10 degrees is like, no, you could do way better than that. So I would say, first of all, check your sleep. Like, do you sleep well?
Not normally. No.
Do you snore with your mouth open?
I don't think so.
Okay. You wake up feeling worse? Okay.
Yeah, my neck's always tight. Everything's worse.
Open your mouth as wide as you can. Okay. Now, keeping your mouth open that wide, try to touch the tip of your tongue to the back of your teeth where they meet your gums. You can't even come close, can you?
No, and I've got ridges. I've watched your videos. I stayed up really late last night watching that whole video with Catherine.
Show me how much you have to close your mouth to do that.
Like open first?
Yeah, open first. Try to touch it. Now close your mouth enough to do it. Yeah, that's probably at least a grade 2 tongue tie. So there's 3 grades, and you probably have at least a 2. At least you have a 1, and that could potentially be a significant thing. So I think you have a direction.
So I should be trying to contact Catherine.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And do you have an opinion about icing? Like icing your back, icing your spine?
Icing delays healing because it cuts off blood supply. And so if you want to feel good for 10 minutes and then delay your healing, then icing is great. But if you want to actually heal, it's not so good.
Okay. And do you have an opinion about pull-ups?
They drive a lot of extension. They're a decent hypertrophy and strength exercise, but I think there's other ways to do it. For people in this course,
yeah,
I wouldn't be my first choice. If your goal is to feel and move better, I think
Yeah.
they're fine though. Like I don't have a problem with them. I think you can probably do them. Just balance out a lot of that extension driven stuff with some stuff that's going to help you access more flexion.
Okay, thank you so much, Connor.
No problem. All right, one more, and then I got to go. Victor.
Hey, thank you, Connor. I have a question. I know I have a jaw asymmetry because I'm having for some years, and when I'm eating, I can feel that, and I asked my dentist as well. And as you said, but I'm committed to the improvements. But to what extent I should check this out? Because also about the vision, for the eyesight, I know I have an issue with the right. I had lenses, but the left is totally right. And I'm wondering if that is the part on the right side that I'm suffering most, not just the tennis, right? So if I'm committing to I don't know 1-2 months of doing what you recommended, to what extent I should be concerned about this, or I should look for, because probably they can improve, right? Isn't it? I mean, the jaw can improve if I do the exercises right, or okay.
I'm releasing a jaw video next week, and I think you should watch that on YouTube. It's going to be helpful for you. There's going to be a nice exercise in there. But already look at my facial asymmetries video, and there's an exercise in there, like how to fix like your facial asymmetries. It has like 800,000 views on YouTube or something like that. Go look at that video. That jaw exercise could be very, very helpful for you. Do it first before you do any of the other drills.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you all. You've been awesome. You've been a phenomenal course group, and I really appreciate all of you. I hope to see you in other courses. If not, this is going to get you off to a fantastic start. I really do believe that. I gave you guys a lot of the best goods I got. So, hey, enjoy it, and I will see you guys later.